The ultrasound gel was cold. I flinched slightly as the doctor pressed the transducer onto my belly, her gentle smile trying to ease the tension I couldn't hide. I stared at the monitor, eyes wide, heart pounding. 20 weeks. Today was the day I would finally find out if I was carrying a boy or a girl, and Gavin had promised he would be there for this moment. But his chair beside the exam table was still empty. "We'll just get started," the doctor said kindly. "He might still make it." I nodded and tried to smile. I wasn't angry, at least not yet. As the grainy black and white image flickered to life on the screen, I felt a swell of something I couldn't name. Wonder, fear, awe. The doctor pointed things out with practiced precision. "There's the head, spine looks perfect. And here, see that movement? That's your baby stretching." My throat tightened. My child, the tiny person I dreamed about for months, was real, alive, squirming inside me. I gripped the paper sheet draped across my thighs and whispered, "You're doing great, baby." The doctor paused. "Would you like to know the sex?" My breath caught. I nodded. She adjusted the probe, squinted at the screen, and smiled. "Congratulations. It's a boy." For a second, the world just stopped. My lips trembled. I blinked fast. A boy. I whispered the word to myself like a prayer. Gavin was going to be thrilled. He'd always talked about teaching his son to throw a football, to fix up old cars, to be a man's man, but with feelings, he joked. We'd even picked out a name, Lucas. I wiped my belly and pulled my sweater down, heart still racing. The doctor handed me a printout of the ultrasound image, and I clutched it like it was made of gold. I stepped out into the hallway of the clinic, already pulling out my phone to call Gavin. No answer. I texted, "It's a boy. Meet me in the lobby." Still nothing. Maybe he was just parking. I decided to go find him. The clinic was bright and modern, its halls filled with light from tall windows and the scent of flowers near the reception area. I turned the corner toward the elevators, slowing my pace as I scanned for Gavin's familiar frame. That's when I heard it. His voice, low, urgent, coming from the end of the corridor, near the vending machines. "We have to be more careful. She's getting suspicious." I froze. Every part of me went still. I inched closer, the photo of Lucas crinkling slightly in my hand. "You're overreacting," a woman replied. Familiar voice. So familiar it made my skin go cold. "She has no idea. Trust me." Sierra, my best friend. I pressed my back against the wall, holding my breath. I could barely hear over the blood rushing in my ears. "I'm serious," Gavin hissed. "You're 4 months now. It's only a matter of time before people start noticing." "Then I'll say it's someone else's," Sierra snapped. "She won't question it. She's too trusting." For months? I staggered a step back, then forward again, my balance wavering. My vision blurred for a second, and I had to blink hard to stay upright. I wasn't mishearing. Gavin. And Sierra. For months. A baby. I clutched my stomach protectively, shielding Lucas as if my body could keep him safe from words. "She'll figure it out eventually," Gavin said. "She's not stupid." "I'll tell her I've been seeing someone else," Sierra muttered. "She'll believe it. She always believes what people tell her." My knees buckled. I crouched against the wall, the cold towel pressing against my spine. My heart beat so fast it felt like it might burst. Betrayal doesn't come in one sharp blow. It bleeds into you, quietly, relentlessly, until it fills every space inside you with ache. They were still talking, making plans, like I didn't exist, like I was just a hurdle in their perfect little story. "I'll take care of the baby," Sierra said, her voice soft now. "You just help financially. She doesn't have to know anything." A sob rose in my throat. I swallowed it down. I looked down at the ultrasound picture in my hand. Lucas, my baby boy, and Gavin was going to have another child. With her. I didn't cry. Not yet. I stood up, fixed my hair, and walked around the corner. "Hey, babe," I said, smiling like nothing had shattered inside me. "You're not going to believe what I just found out." Gavin spun around the second he heard my voice. He looked startled, too startled, but he recovered quickly, that signature smile slipping onto his face like it always did. "There you are," he said, striding toward me as if nothing was wrong. "I was just looking for you." "Were you?" I asked lightly. My voice didn't crack. It didn't rise or shake. It was smooth, controlled, rehearsed, even though none of this had been in any script I'd ever imagined for my life. Sierra stood a few feet behind him, her expression unreadable. She didn't say a word, just offered me a tight, plastic smile and quickly walked away down the hall. Gavin didn't watch her leave. He turned all his attention to me, to the photo in my trembling hand. "Well," he asked, his eyes sparkling with excitement. "Is it?" I handed him the picture. He looked at it, then gasped. "A boy." His face lit up. "Lucas. Our Lucas." I knew it. He reached out and wrapped his arms around me, lifting me slightly off the ground. I forced a laugh. My face pressed against his shoulder, and for a second, I inhaled the familiar scent of his cologne. Citrus and sandalwood, the scent I once loved. Now it made my stomach twist. He kissed my temple. "You okay?" he asked, pulling back to study my face. "You look pale." "Just tired," I murmured. "Long morning." "Of course. Come on, let's go home. We'll celebrate properly. You want pancakes or steak? You can have anything you want today." He looked so happy, so genuinely elated. I almost wondered if I'd imagined it all. Almost. But then I remembered Sierra's voice, the way she said, "She always believes what people tell her." And I remembered Gavin's face when he said, "For months now." No, I didn't imagine any of it. I sat beside him in the car, staring out the window as Boulder's late autumn streets rolled by. Leaves blew in soft spirals across the pavement. The world outside looked exactly the same as it had this morning. But inside me, everything had changed. Gavin hummed to a country song on the radio. He drummed the steering wheel with his thumbs. He talked about baby names, baby clothes, soccer games, birthday parties, the kind of stroller he wanted to buy. I didn't respond. I just smiled when I had to, nodded when he asked if Lucas still felt right, gave a quiet when he asked if we should tell our parents tonight. When we pulled into the driveway of our home, a cozy 3-bedroom tucked into a quiet neighborhood just outside town, I realized I didn't want to go inside. That house used to feel like a dream. Now it felt like a stage, and I was the actress trapped in a play I never auditioned for. "I'll start dinner," I said once we were inside. "You should rest. You've had a long morning, too. Don't be silly." "Let me help." "No," I said too fast. Then softened. I'd rather just do something with my hands. It calms me." He kissed my cheek and disappeared into the living room. I could hear the television come on, the low hum of a football game. I stood in the kitchen and peeled potatoes with robotic precision. My hands moved. My brain spun. For months. Sierra was 4 months along. I got pregnant in September, which meant she had conceived in July or early August. I counted backward, lips moving silently. The weekend, Gavin had gone back into town from the lake house. He said it was because he forgot to submit something urgent for work. He was gone 2 nights. I'd thought nothing of it at the time. I'd even teased him when he came back, "Don't fall in love with your spreadsheets." He hadn't fallen in love with spreadsheets. He'd fallen into bed with Sierra. The knife slipped, nicking my finger. I stared at the blood bead forming on my skin, bright and sharp. But I didn't flinch. I pressed a paper towel to it and kept going. Gavin walked in a few minutes later, sniffing the air. "Smells amazing," he said. "You're incredible. Honestly, I don't know how I got this lucky." I turned my back to him, stirring the pan so he wouldn't see the tremble in my shoulders. I was going to vomit. He came up behind me, slid his arms around my waist, and pressed a kiss to the back of my neck. "I can't wait to meet our son," he whispered. You're going to be such a good mom. I closed my eyes and swallowed the scream lodged deep in my throat. That night, I barely slept. Gavin curled around me like always, his hand resting protectively on my stomach, like some kind of noble guardian. But I couldn't breathe. I lay there wide-eyed, staring at the ceiling, listening to the rhythm of his breathing. Calm, steady, deceitfully peaceful. How could he sleep so soundly knowing what I knew now? How could he hold me like that when just hours ago he was talking to my best friend about hiding her pregnancy? I watched the shadows shift across the ceiling and tried to remember what it felt like to love him. Really love him. But something inside me had cracked so violently, so suddenly, and I couldn't find the pieces anymore. At sunrise, I slipped out of bed. I padded barefoot to the kitchen, made a pot of tea, and sat in the silence of our home like a ghost. Every corner of that house held memories. Our engagement on the back porch, the nursery we'd only just started painting, the wall of sticky notes Gavin used to leave me every morning, little love notes taped to the fridge. I used to think that was love. I used to think we were real. But real love doesn't hide children. When Gavin finally stirred, he came into the kitchen yawning, rubbing his eyes, and smiled at me like nothing had happened. "Morning, babe. You okay?" I nodded. Just couldn't sleep. Too much on my mind. He leaned down to kiss my forehead, and I didn't flinch. That scared me more than anything. I didn't flinch because I didn't feel anything at all. Later that morning, I opened my laptop and stared at a blank document for nearly 10 minutes before I finally started typing. It wasn't a letter. It wasn't a list. It wasn't even a plan. It was just a stream of consciousness pouring out like water from a cracked pipe. Everything I couldn't say aloud, I gave to the page. He betrayed me. She betrayed me. And now I'm supposed to pretend I don't know. I'm supposed to raise this child in the same house where that secret lives, like it's some dormant volcano no one wants to name. I wrote for hours. I paused only when Lucas kicked inside me, a sudden thump against my ribs that startled me out of my spiral. "Hey," I whispered, placing both hands on my belly. "I'm sorry. You didn't ask for any of this." He kicked again. Strong. Steady. I smiled through the tears I hadn't even noticed were falling. That afternoon, while Gavin was out on a grocery run, my phone rang. I checked the screen. Sierra Monroe. I almost didn't answer. My fingers hovered over the red button. But curiosity won. "Hey," I said, my voice hollow. "Madeline," she chirped. Oh my God, how did the ultrasound go?" I swallowed. "It's a boy." There was a pause, then a squeal. I knew it. Gavin must be over the moon. "He is." Another pause. "Listen, I was wondering if you wanted to meet up. I have some news too." "News?" "Well, I'd rather tell you in person." I already knew what her news was, but I wanted to see her. I needed to. I needed to look into her eyes and see whether any part of her felt guilty, whether any part of her remembered that we were supposed to be sisters. "Sure," I said. "Maple and pine at 4. "Perfect. See you then." The moment I hung up, my hands started shaking. That cafe was our place. The cozy corner table with the chipped sugar jar. The ivy in the window, we always joked, looked fake, but wasn't. It was where we used to dream up vacations we couldn't afford and talk about the men we loved, or thought we did. It was the one place that still felt untouched. Until now. When I walked in later that afternoon, Sierra was already there, sipping a latte, her cheeks glowing, her free hand resting gently on her stomach. She stood when she saw me. "Mads," she beamed, pulling me into a hug. "You look radiant." I hugged her back barely. She felt warm, familiar, and completely foreign. We sat. She leaned forward, her eyes bright. "Okay, so, there's this guy." I looked at her and smiled. "Tell me everything." And I meant it, because I needed to hear every single lie fall from her lips. She was glowing. That was the first thing I noticed. Sierra always had a way of looking effortlessly beautiful, like someone who never needed to try. But this was different. There was a light in her face that wasn't from foundation or a good night's sleep. It was pride, excitement, a kind of happiness I hadn't seen in her before, and I hated that I noticed. "So," she said, folding her hands on the table between us. Her nails were freshly painted, soft pink. "I know I've been vague, but I wanted to tell you in person. There's someone." I sipped my lemon tea slowly. "Someone serious?" Sierra blushed like a teenager. "More than serious. He's amazing, Mads. Kind. Generous. He says I make him feel alive again." I stared at her across the table, watching her speak with a kind of practiced sincerity, like she believed every word she said. Or maybe she really did. "And you're keeping it a secret because—" I asked. She tilted her head. "Well, it's complicated. He's married." I almost choked. Not from shock, I already knew, but from how casually she said it, like she was talking about the weather. "But he's leaving her," she added quickly. "It's been over for a long time between them. He just hasn't figured out how to tell her yet. She's very fragile." Fragile. I gripped the edge of the table beneath the linen cloth and pressed down hard. "Have I met him?" I asked. My voice was so steady, I almost surprised myself. Sierra hesitated. "Maybe. But I promise not to say anything until things are more official." "Official?" I repeated. She smiled dreamy. "He wants to marry me, Madeline. We're going to be a family." My stomach turned. Lucas flipped inside me as if reacting to the absurdity of it all. "And he knows about the baby?" "Of course. He's been so supportive, buying vitamins, making sure I rest. He talks to the bump when he thinks no one's looking." She giggled. I stared at her. I couldn't see a trace of guilt, not even a shadow. "And his wife?" I asked quietly. "He says she's distant, cold, that they're just coexisting now. He's only staying for the baby. She's pregnant too, apparently. But he says it doesn't mean anything anymore." The audacity of it hit me like a slap. He told her I was cold, distant, that this child growing inside me, Lucas, was meaningless, just an obligation. I looked away, blinking hard. "Anyway," she continued, her voice light and breathy, "it's all finally falling into place. We're thinking of moving out of the city. A house with a backyard. A fresh start." I nodded slowly. "Sounds lovely." She beamed. "It will be. He deserves peace, you know. And I deserve to be chosen." I wanted to scream. "You were chosen the moment you said yes to ruining another woman's family. You were chosen when you let him touch you, knowing exactly who he came home to at night." But I didn't say any of that. Instead, I smiled. "Do you think he'll really leave her?" Sierra's expression faltered just for a second. "He said he would. He promised. He's just waiting for the right time." A flicker of doubt. It was there, barely visible, but I caught it. "And if he doesn't?" I asked. She shook her head. "He will. I know him." I set my cup down. "I hope, for your sake, that you're right." She reached across the table and took my hand. "I'm so glad I could tell you. You're the only person I trust with this." That line almost broke me. I'm the only person she trusts. While she carries the child of the man I married, the man I loved, the man who lied to both of us, and somehow convinced her that she was the victim in this mess. We paid the bill. She hugged me tight at the door, her voice sweet in my ear. "Don't tell anyone, okay?" I forced a smile. "Your secret's safe with me." Because I needed it to be. For now. When I got back home, the first thing I did was lock the bathroom door. I didn't want Gavin to see my face. I didn't want him to touch me, ask questions, or flash that charming, polished smile that used to disarm me so easily. I needed silence, and space, and time to breathe without choking on all the lies I had just swallowed over coffee and lemon tea. I sat on the closed toilet lid, clutching my stomach with both hands, rocking gently, as if that would calm the storm rising inside me. Lucas kicked once, then again, small thuds beneath my ribs like he could sense everything inside me unraveling. I whispered to him, "It's okay. Mommy's just tired. Just a little tired, that's all." But I wasn't tired. I was furious, and I was scared. The worst part was how good she had been at lying to me. Sierra hadn't stammered, hadn't hesitated, except once, when I asked if he would really leave his wife. For a moment, I saw the girl I used to know, the one who cried at rom-coms and swore she'd never settle for someone who didn't love her out loud. But it disappeared just as fast as it came, buried under that self-congratulatory glow she wore now. She really believed Gavin was hers, and maybe he was. After dinner, Gavin curled up with me on the couch like nothing was wrong. He placed a hand on my belly and said, "Can't wait to meet this little guy." I nodded, letting him speak, but I barely heard his words. My mind was elsewhere, in a delivery room, in a courtroom, in a future that looked nothing like the life I'd built in my head. Later that night, while he snored softly beside me, I sat at the kitchen table with the lights off. I didn't want to cry. I didn't want to break. I wanted to understand. How long had it been going on? When did it start? How could he touch me and her and look both of us in the eye like nothing was wrong? And most of all, why didn't I see it coming? I had always prided myself on being observant, grounded. I taught high schoolers how to read between the lines of a story, how to spot the truth in fiction, and yet I had missed the biggest betrayal of my life unfolding right in front of me. My phone buzzed. A text from Sierra. "Today was so special. Thank you for listening. I feel like I can finally breathe again." I stared at the message for a long time, then turned my phone face down on the table. Around 2 a.m., I finally collapsed into bed. I didn't sleep. I hovered in that strange space between dreaming and waking, where thoughts repeat in loops and emotions blur into numbness. By morning, I knew I couldn't stay in that house another day without going insane. I needed air. I needed truth. I needed my mother. Gavin was still asleep when I dressed quietly, packed a small bag, and slipped out the front door. I didn't leave a note. I didn't send a text. I just got in the car and drove. The roads were quiet. The trees lining the highway dipped in gold and orange. Fall was fading fast, and winter would be here soon. I drove through the suburbs, past the park where Gavin and I used to walk our dog before she passed, past the bookstore where Sierra and I once spent an entire Saturday arguing about whether romance novels deserved literary respect. I arrived at my parents' house just after 9 a.m. My childhood home looked exactly the same, quaint, warm, and steady. There were mums on the porch and a small wooden sign by the door that read, "Home is where your story begins." I knocked once, then opened the door with the spare key still hidden under the frog statue. My mom was in the kitchen, pulling a tray of muffins from the oven. She turned, saw my face, and froze. "Madeline," she said softly. "Sweetheart, what's wrong?" That was all it took. My lips parted, but no sound came out. Just tears. Endless, silent, bitter tears. She rushed forward, wrapping me in her arms. "I'm here," she whispered. "Whatever it is, we'll face it together." And for the first time in weeks, I let myself fall apart. My mother didn't ask anything right away. She just sat me down at the kitchen table, poured a cup of tea, like she always did when life got hard, and placed it in front of me with both hands. "You don't have to talk yet," she said gently. "Just breathe." I did. I tried, but the words kept forming in my chest like a pressure valve about to blow. "He's cheating on me," I whispered. She didn't blink, didn't gasp or drop her mug. She just sat quietly, her eyes never leaving mine. With "Sierra," I added, and that name broke something loose inside me. Mom's breath caught. "Sierra? You're Sierra." I nodded, too ashamed to cry again. Her face tightened, not with shock, but with fury. "How long?" "For months," I said. "She's pregnant. It's his." She covered her mouth, her fingers trembling. "Oh, honey," I laughed. It was bitter and sharp and nothing like joy. And the best part? They were planning to keep it from me. He promised to support her financially, but to keep it quiet. I overheard them after my ultrasound. I was about to tell him he's having a son, and he was around the corner telling my best friend how to lie to me. Silence swallowed the room. The only sound was the hum of the refrigerator and the tick of the old wall clock above the window. Then Mom said, "Did you tell him you know?" I shook my head. Not yet. I didn't trust myself. I was afraid of what I'd say or do. So I came here. I needed to feel sane again. She reached for my hand and held it tight. "You are sane," she said firmly. "You're grounded and brave and good. That man, he doesn't deserve you." I didn't answer. From the living room, I heard the front door creak open. My dad's footsteps were unmistakable. Slow, steady, deliberate. He stepped into the kitchen a few moments later, newspaper tucked under his arm, reading glasses still perched on his nose. He took one look at me and frowned. What happened? My mom stood, walked over to him, and whispered something in his ear. His jaw tensed. His eyes flicked toward me, then back to the wall behind me, like he was fighting the urge to punch something. "He did what?" he said, voice low. "Dad, please don't what? Be angry?" "Because I am." I stood up, shaky on my feet. I didn't come here to make it worse. I just didn't know where else to go. "You came to the right place," he said. "You're not alone in this. You never were." I sank back into the chair, exhausted in a way that sleep wouldn't fix. "I don't even know what to do," I whispered. "Should I leave him? Should I confront him? Should I wait until the baby's born? What if Lucas grows up without a father?" My mom looked at me with eyes that had seen so much. "That man made his choices, Madeline. Your job is to protect yourself and your son. Nothing else matters right now." Dad added, "If you stay, you're telling him that what he did was survivable, that your love is elastic enough to stretch around betrayal. Is that the kind of marriage you want your son to learn from?" I stared down at my tea. No, it wasn't, but I wasn't ready to say it aloud yet. Mom must have sensed my hesitation, because she stood and said softly, "You don't have to make any decisions tonight. Rest. Eat something. Let yourself breathe." She cooked me soup, potato, and leek, my favorite since I was 10. And we sat at the table like we used to after school, when I would tell her about drama club or the girls who gossiped too loud in class. Only now the drama was mine. That night, I slept in my childhood bed. The same comforter, the same posters on the wall, the same creaky floorboard by the closet. But I wasn't the same girl who had once dreamed of fairy tale love. I was a woman now, a mother. And in the morning, I would stop pretending I wasn't broken, because sometimes being broken is exactly what helps you see the cracks in everyone else. I drove back home the next day with a knot in my stomach and a storm under my skin. My hands gripped the steering wheel tighter with every mile that brought me closer to him, to the man who had smiled at me while betraying me in the most intimate way. I'd rehearsed 100 different versions of what I would say, but none of them felt right. The only thing I knew was this: I wouldn't lie anymore. I wouldn't smile through pain. I wouldn't protect his comfort at the cost of my truth. When I walked through the front door, Gavin looked up from the couch like he hadn't even noticed I was gone for hours. He was in sweatpants, his laptop open, a half-eaten sandwich on a plate next to him. "Hey, babe," he said, standing. "Where'd you go?" I tried calling. "I was with my parents." He blinked. "Everything okay?" "No," I said calmly. "We need to talk." He froze for a second, then shut his laptop slowly. "Okay, is something wrong with the baby?" "No, Lucas is fine." I placed my purse on the counter and looked him straight in the eye. "It's you who's the problem." The color drained from his face. I didn't flinch. "I know about Sierra," I said. "I heard everything. At the clinic, you weren't exactly whispering." His jaw tightened. "Madeline, you don't get to explain it away," I snapped. "I heard you. Every word. The part where you said, I'm getting suspicious. The part where she said she'd lie to me. The part where you agreed to support her quietly. He opened his mouth, closed it again, then finally said, It's not what you think. I laughed. It was cold and ugly. Really? Then please, tell me what exactly I misunderstood. It just happened, he muttered. It was one time. A mistake. She said she was on birth control. For months, I cut in. She's 4 months pregnant, Gavin. That's not one time. I didn't plan for this. No. You just planned to keep it secret. He rubbed his hands through his hair, pacing the living room like a man trapped in his own guilt. Look, I was going to tell you. Eventually. When? After Lucas was born? After Sierra's baby was in preschool? Were you just hoping I'd never figure it out? He looked at me, finally meeting my eyes. I didn't want to hurt you. That was what broke me. You didn't want to hurt me? I repeated, You had a choice every step of the way, Gavin. And every single time, you chose you. You chose the lie. He reached for me, but I stepped back. I'm leaving, I said. I've already packed a bag. I'm taking Lucas and going back to my parents' house. His face collapsed. Madeline, please. Let's talk this through. We are talking. You just don't like what I'm saying. I'll fix it, he promised. I'll end it with Sierra. I'll go to therapy. I'll do anything. You've had 4 months to do anything. You did nothing. He stood there, helpless, silent. I grabbed my overnight bag, my prenatal vitamins, my phone charger. My hands were shaking, but I didn't stop moving. And the baby, he asked quietly. You're going to keep me from my son? You want to be a father? Then act like one, I said. Go through the courts. File for visitation. Pay child support. You don't get to play happy family just because your affair blew up in your face. He reached for me again. Please, don't do this. I turned to the door. You already did it, Gavin, I said without looking back. Now you live with it. And then I walked out. The first night back at my parents' house, I slept more deeply than I had in months. Not because I wasn't hurting, God, I was, but because the mask had finally come off. No more pretending. No more performing. Just me and the truth. I woke up to the sound of my mom humming in the kitchen. The smell of cinnamon rolls drifting through the house like a memory from childhood. I lay there for a moment with my hand resting on my belly, feeling Lucas turn gently beneath my skin. We're okay, I whispered to him. We're going to be okay. The weeks that followed were quiet, but not empty. I focused on preparing for Lucas. My dad painted the spare bedroom a soft green, the color I'd loved since I was a little girl. My mom sorted through old baby clothes she'd kept from when I was born. She cried over a tiny pair of socks. I cried over everything else. Gavin called. I didn't answer. Then he emailed, texted, even sent flowers to my parents' house. White chrysanthemums, the same ones he'd brought to the hospital when my grandmother died. I didn't respond, because now I understood the difference between regret and responsibility. He wasn't sorry for what he'd done. He was sorry he'd been caught. One crisp April morning it happened. The contractions started slowly, just a dull ache in my lower back. I wasn't sure at first, but then they became rhythmic, persistent, undeniable. I woke my mom, and within minutes, the house was moving like a well-oiled machine. Hospital bag, phone charger, snacks, insurance cards. My dad warmed up the car, and we were off. The ride to the hospital was a blur. I remember gripping the armrest during every bump in the road, the sun rising pink and gold over the mountains, my mom holding my hand as I breathed through the pain. She whispered, "You're doing so well, sweetheart," and I clung to her voice like a lifeline. Labor was intense, but manageable. I focused on each breath, each push, each moment closer to meeting the boy who had been with me through every heartbreak. And then at 3:14 p.m., I heard him cry for the first time. Lucas, my son, My lungs collapsed with the weight of love and relief and disbelief all at once. They laid him on my chest, and I stared down at his tiny, wrinkled face. His little fists curled tight against my skin. "Hi," I whispered, stroking the damp fuzz on his head. "I'm your mom, and you're my everything." He blinked up at me, slowly, sleepily, then settled into my heartbeat like he'd been waiting for it all along. The nurses said he was perfect, healthy, strong, 7 pounds, 1 ounce, 10 fingers, 10 toes. I counted them twice just to be sure. My parents came in later with balloons and flowers and the softest baby blanket I'd ever seen. My dad teared up when he held Lucas, and my mom couldn't stop smiling. Gavin wasn't there. He didn't know I was in labor, and even if he had, I wouldn't have let him in that room. The next day, I signed the birth certificate. Lucas Gavin Pierce. I paused at the middle name, fingers hovering over the line, then wrote it anyway. He deserved to know who his father was, even if I'd never let that man define him. Back at my parents' house, we settled into a rhythm. Feedings, diaper changes, naps repeat. Lucas rarely cried. He loved being held. His favorite place was curled against my chest in the early hours of the morning, when the whole house was still asleep and it felt like it was just the two of us in the world. Gavin emailed again. This time he wanted to meet. He said he missed his son, that he wanted to step up. I forwarded the message to my lawyer. Let him show up in court. Let him prove it, because fatherhood isn't made of shared DNA or one-time apologies. It's made of presence and truth and work, and I was already doing all of that, alone. Lucas was nearly 6 months old when I saw her again. I hadn't planned for it. I hadn't even thought much about Sierra in those final months of my pregnancy, too focused on feeding, sleep schedules, and 1,000 little decisions that came with motherhood. But then one afternoon, while walking Lucas through the park in his stroller, I saw her. She was sitting alone on a bench near the duck pond, holding a small baby in her arms. Our eyes met. I froze. For a moment, I considered turning around, just walking the other way and pretending I never saw her. But something in her face stopped me, not fear, not guilt, something closer to grief. I pushed the stroller toward her slowly. Lucas stirred, then dozed back off. When I reached the bench, I stood in silence for a beat. Sierra looked up at me. Her hair was pulled into a messy knot, and her eyes looked heavier than I remembered. "Hi," she said, her voice small. I nodded. "Hey." There was a long silence between us. The babies were the only sound, gentle coos, soft breaths, the rustle of blankets. "He's beautiful," she said, glancing down at Lucas. "Looks just like you." I sat at the far end of the bench. "Is that her?" Sierra nodded. "Emma. For months, last week." I looked at the baby girl in her arms. She had Gavin's chin, his eyes. I wondered if he'd met her yet. "She's sweet," I said quietly. "Thanks," Sierra whispered. "She cries a lot. I haven't slept more than 3 hours straight in months." I smiled, tired, understanding. "Yeah, same." More silence. This time it wasn't awkward. It was just real. "Finally," she said, "I wanted to call, to apologize, 100 times. But I didn't know if you'd ever want to hear from me again." I didn't answer, because the truth was I hadn't decided. "I was stupid," she continued, her voice cracking. "I thought he loved me. I don't know what I thought. He told me everything I wanted to hear, and I believed him." "That makes 2 of us," I said. She looked at me then, really looked. "He left us," she whispered, "a month after she was born. Said he needed to focus on rebuilding his life. I haven't heard from him since." I didn't feel satisfaction. Not really. What I felt was tired, heavy, like her words had taken me back to the day I left him and everything I'd carried since. "I'm sorry," she said. "Not just for that. For all of it. For betraying you. For thinking I was different." I studied her for a long moment. Her shoulders were slumped. Her hands trembled slightly as she rocked the baby. She didn't look like a rival. She didn't look like the girl who once wore matching bracelets with me in college, who helped me choose my wedding shoes. She looked like a mother. And like me, she was doing it alone. "I don't hate you," I said finally. I thought I did, but I don't. She turned her face toward me, surprised. "I don't forgive you either," I added. "At least not yet. Maybe not ever. But I'm not carrying it anymore." She nodded slowly. "That's fair." We sat there another 5 minutes, just listening to our babies breathe, watching ducks cut across the pond's still surface. Then I stood. "Take care of her," I said. "You too," she whispered. And I walked away, not in anger, not in bitterness, just done. Autumn returned quietly like an old friend. The leaves turned gold again, just like they had the year everything fell apart, but this time I wasn't breaking. I was still standing, stronger, quieter, steadier. Lucas had just turned 1. He was walking now, with the awkward, determined steps of a child who didn't know fear yet. His laughter filled the rooms of my parents' house like light. Every morning he pointed to the window and shouted, "But!" his version of bird. And every evening he fell asleep with his head tucked beneath my chin, like he belonged there. Because he did. I never went back to Gavin. The legal process had taken months, but it ended the way I expected. Gavin was ordered to pay child support, granted supervised visitation twice a month, which he used twice, then stopped showing up. No calls, no texts, no more white chrysanthemums. He vanished from our lives the way liars always do, quietly, like smoke from a fire already put out. And I let him. Sierra sent a photo once. Emma in a blue dress, clutching a stuffed bunny. There was no caption, just a picture. I didn't reply, but I saved it. Not for her. Not even for me. For Lucas, maybe. One day he might ask. I returned to teaching part-time that spring. My mother watched Lucas while I stood in front of bright-eyed teenagers and taught them how to read between the lines, how to spot truth inside fiction. The irony wasn't lost on me, but more than that, it helped me breathe again. I wasn't just a mother or a daughter or a woman who had been betrayed. I was Madeline, a teacher, a survivor, a whole person. We moved out of my parents' house shortly after Lucas's 2nd birthday. Just a little rental on the edge of town, a white cottage with blue shutters and a crooked fence, but it was ours. On our first night there, I sat cross-legged on the living room floor eating pizza with Lucas, the box open between us, tomato sauce smeared on both our faces. He looked up at me, cheese stuck to his chin, and said, "Mama happy?" I laughed. It caught me by surprise. "Yeah, baby," I whispered. "Mama's happy." Sometimes people ask me if I've forgiven Gavin. I never know what to say. Forgiveness is a tricky thing. People like to think it's a finish line you eventually reach, like once you've crossed it, you're free. But I think forgiveness is more like a room you choose not to walk into, a door you keep closed, not because you're bitter, but because the air in there never made you feel like yourself. I don't need him to be sorry anymore. I don't need him at all. Because Lucas wakes up every day and shouts my name like it's the only one that matters. Because I can look in the mirror and not see someone broken, but someone rebuilt. Because the life I have now, it isn't flashy, it isn't perfect, but it's honest. And that's enough. One day, I'll tell Lucas everything. Not to make him hate his father, but to teach him what real love looks like. What real strength sounds like. How to never mistake quiet for weakness or kindness for permission. But for now, I let him sleep. I let him laugh. I let him grow in a world where truth is not something to fear, but something to trust. And every night when I tuck him in and kiss his forehead, I whisper the same thing. We made it. Because we did. And we always will.